Wait, hold up. This isn't where I wanted to start. 1 second. Alright, here we go. Almost there. And here. Good evening, fellow night owls. Whether you've been playing games for a long time or consider yourself a novice to the hobby, we often rely on our previous gaming experiences to help inform our gaming choices. You may not have played a Sonic game, for example, but if you've ever played a platformer, then you at least have a rough idea of how Sonic plays. Tunic, however, was a game that both rewarded and punished me for falling back into familiar gaming habits. This kept me on my toes as I descended ladders, unlocked doors, and pored over manuals for hidden clues. I even had to set the game down for a little bit before returning to it with a renewed perspective. Does this Robin Hood cosplayer deserve a foxy frolic on your Mac, PC, Xbox, PlayStation, or Switch? Stay tuned to find out. There was a lot of buzz surrounding this game when it released in 2022, at least in the circles I run in. Many that I heard discussing it talked about the secretive nature of the game, so I stopped looking for information about it. Andrew Schuldeis, the creator of Tunic, wanted to emulate the experience of exploring the world of a game without necessarily understanding it clearly. To preserve this experience if you haven't played it, I'm only going to be discussing themes that jumped out at me, so whether you've played this game or are merely considering it, I think that you'll get something from this examination either way. Let's start with some of the basics of gameplay. Tunic starts with a hero at the shoreline in a very pleasing yet polygonal world. You control our fox hero in a third-person action-adventure game that looks to capture gameplay elements from early Zelda titles as well as the Souls-like style of game. Let's talk about each half of the Tunic coin. The Zelda portions of the game are meant to elicit the exploration that was required in the first Legend of Zelda. Very little information is given to you, and unless you had the manual, you had to figure out everything yourself. In that spirit, the developers of Tunic scattered pages of what appear to be a game manual that include information about how the game controls. This is the first of many Jim Halpert winks at the camera, and I really like this little insertion. When you get these pages, you can see that most of the text is in an unreadable script. They do, however, teach you how to do the maneuvers in the game. For example, page 14 of the instruction booklet teaches you how to lock on as well as how to block and dodge. The ability to lock on to your opponents is not locked to finding this page, however. You could have found this ability by accidentally pushing the button, for example, or simply experimenting in combat. Getting back to our Zelda inspiration, you explore a wide map and gather tools which you learn to use further along in the game. This is usually done by making progression without that tool possible. For example, you cannot travel through thick bushes with the lily stick equipped. To get past them, you'll need to use a key that you find nearby to unlock a door. Again, none of this is told to you, you basically have to find it. You could basically swap the fox for a rude little dude in a green hat, and this could be a decent impression of a Zelda game, which is great in my opinion. The Minish Cap was one of the first videos I did on the channel, and Link to the Past is one of the best RPGs around. So while it pays fairly direct homage to that legendary series, it controls differently enough to recognize that Tunic wasn't trying to step on Nintendo's toes at all. Especially given how litigious Nintendo has been at time of recording, I would tread lightly around Mario unless you happen to be a big city lawyer of some kind.
Daddy done good, huh?
Where Tunic deviates from its gaming ancestor in green, no, not that one, yeah, there you go. Where Tunic deviates from the Zelda formula is elements it borrows from the Souls-like genre. But what is a Souls-like game? You see, many hobby communities will often name a technique or style after the first person or team to do that specific thing. Dark Souls is a legitimate contender as a first in its genre to be super successful, so the name kinda stuck. We've had a pile of these games since, and Tunic is definitely among those. But many of these games have a very, unappealing visual style to me. Tunic discards for but keeps the core tenets of a Souls-like. To me, a Souls-like game contains some sort of in-world save mechanic, like a shrine or a fire, that resets all or most enemies upon saving. Saving also generally restores all your health, potions, and magic levels, and in certain games also refills all of your ammo. Souls-like games also usually have a very high difficulty curve paired with a resurrection mechanic. If you fall in battle, you may lose a portion of your experience and money, then you'll resurrect at your most recent save point. You may return to that place where you fell in battle to find a ghost of your character which, when approached, recovers those lost resources. You also generally have limited resources such as potions to restore health, which complicates how you plan your strategy. You may be halfway through a dungeon and be low on healing potions, for example. If you need to go back to rest at a fire to refill your magic gauge and potions, many enemies in your path will respawn to their original places. As the player, you have to weigh those costs, and they are present here in Tunic. This, along with an upgrade system that took me way too long to figure out, made for a challenging and engaging experience. They have a baby no die mode that you can enable, and boy did I. I like video games, but I am not the best at them, so being able to experience this beautiful world and interesting puzzles without worrying about combat difficulty was a super nice feature. When I was growing up, I always felt like there was this stigma about beating games at least on normal mode. Like, for some reason if you beat it on easy, you were somehow less credible. Looking back on it now, it feels like a virgin measuring argument to have, and I don't shame anyone for beating games on easy. And now that this feature is becoming more common, I turn it on basically any chance I get. Now, I'm not going to be going into any further details about the story. I purposely tried to explain as little as I could about the game, simply due to the joy of exploring the story for yourself. I have a lot of thoughts about the story, and initially I wanted to talk about how I interpreted Tunic, but then...
From the Night Owl Gaming head...
Hello, yes, this is Cody Smith with a breaking news report. Microsoft is getting ready to up the price of Game Pass, and that comes on the heels of them destroying or consolidating 4 companies that are really beloved in the Xbox community. Don't believe what this man says.
Sorry, it does that sometimes. So, Microsoft closed 3 studios and reorganized a 4th, including Tango Gameworks, which made one of my favorite games of 2023. This is truly an appalling situation, and I hope that all those affected by layoffs find work soon. This seems to be sending confusing messages to teams that Microsoft acquired. If you're acquired by Microsoft, this may mean being shut down after one failure, being absorbed by another studio for support grunt work, or risk being scrapped after lower than projected sales success. In my line of work, we would describe this as having competing values. Kim Cameron and Robert Quinn discuss how an organization needs to be explicitly clear about their organization's values. The biggest takeaway that I took from their book is that if your organization's values do not align with your goals, then leadership like Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond will have to answer for that apparent contradiction. Now, I have no inside information about Xbox's decision making, but their reasonings may be based off of outdated or unreliable methods. We're living in a post-COVID world where this whole console generation's development cycle was completely stunted. And because of this novel situation, traditional methods won't be as reliable to measure needs in response to something like a global pandemic. I think that Tunic's exploration model is an excellent example of how adapting your goals to changing information and situations helps you net success. When you start the game, you are unaware of what your goals are. You arrive at the first sign and you learn the direction of a sword. This gives you an objective. I mean, your stick is nice and all, but in the interest of progressing the game, acquiring a sword is necessary. The next thing you'll likely see is a locked door, which puts you at a decision tree. Context clues and experience with games in this genre tell me that I need to update my goals. Tunic is full of multiple layers of these types of decisions, so using contextual information to update your goals in real time is a valuable skill. So tip number 1 for playing Tunic or running Xbox, I guess, is be willing to adjust your goals and be willing to do it quickly. If you've ever worked at a corporate job or know someone who has, you've likely heard of a mission and vision statement. While it is easy to mock these concepts, they can be influential if used correctly. Think of a vision as where you want to go, and the mission as how you will achieve it. Revealing what makes this concept mockable is that many organizations say that they want certain things, and then act in a way that contradicts that message. Like when Arby's gives away their sandwiches for free. Nobody's fooled by your tricks, Arby's. If it's good enough to be given away, then we know it's not good enough to buy. Now, organizational goals can be knocked off course when one leader or department's goals are given too much importance in the overall goals of the organization. And this can be easy for a charismatic leader like Steve Jobs or Jesus. The problem with Jesus in this scenario is that you're always going to have dissenters. People who think that their department is more important than yours. So you have sales, marketing, physical media, online distribution, hardware considerations, and many other departments vying for Microsoft's resources. Now, I'm definitely not saying that any one person is to blame for this situation. Going back to our discussion about failure in Okami, many failures are simply due to the complexity of daily operations and should be expected. But that doesn't excuse not being prepared for those types of failures and trying to put into place safeguards that help reduce the impact of those failures. If Microsoft's real goal is to be a good steward of the IP that they own, then their attitudes should align with their actions. And yet here they are, scuttling companies that they recently bought. In Tunic, it's interesting to see what looks like the stated goals of the game, and there are many areas that suggest a certain direction that you should take. While I was playing through the game, I actually had a thought that I hadn't thought about in other games before. I hadn't ever really thought about why the game world was trying to stop me. Sure, creatures in fantasy settings are often aggressive, but many of these creatures are humanoid or robotic. Why would so many different types of enemies be so resistant to the change that a hero could bring? In the story of Tunic, as in the real world, if you're experiencing a lot of resistance to success, it may be time to reevaluate if there are competing values present. The values of shareholders may be benefited by ceaseless acquisitions, but game companies that fear being shut down may reduce their output to games that are successful but just kind of feel soulless. So tip number 2 is to assess your actions and see if they align with your stated beliefs. If you believe that you should be playing Tunic in a certain way, but your progress is slow or incredibly hindered, maybe you need to realign your actions with the goals of the game. So taking some time to reevaluate your goals and the reading material can help you reevaluate how your actions help you advance the goal of the story. The last point I'll make about competing values is that if they are out of alignment, you should make some effort to realign these actions with the stated goals. This happens in Tunic in a very unique way that I won't spoil, but I promise that when you get to the ending of Tunic, that this kind of will make a little bit more sense, so I'll just use Xbox as the example in this closing section. Leaders at Xbox have made some good and some bad decisions, but I'd say that it's high time for an organizational shakeup at Xbox. Multiple last place finishes in the console market, slowing Game Pass growth, and outcry from multiple communities show that Xbox might have leaders with competing values, which is a shame because there are many Xbox fans that want the best for this gaming lineage. And I mean, you can count me as one of those people. I hope that the upcoming Xbox event can prove me wrong and steer back into making quality consoles and supporting unique and varied gaming experiences. But as a great man once said,
"It fooled me, we can't get fooled again."
To close the book on Tunic, it's a game that requires you pay attention to it. The obscured language and general hostility of the world's denizens are barriers to understanding your goal. When I started Tunic, I didn't foresee the game ending up where it did, but that's kind of what it's like to make decisions for yourself or a company in real life. We all make decisions based on meeting the urgency of the need at hand, but many factors can dictate how much we consider our future selves. So I hope that after this video, you'll give Tunic a go. It's a stunning adventure in a simply beautiful world, and I think that you'll appreciate the way that this game constructively handles its story. My name is Cody, and I'll see you tonight.